Good morning, everyone. This is Meghna Yadav, the presenter of the session for today, and I want to extend a very warm welcome to each one of you. Thank you so much for coming online well in time, but we do see numbers are increasing, and we have multiple set of registrations. So I would request you to stay online and let's give some more time to people who are trying to join us. For sure, we will start within 4 to 5 minutes from now. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming online in time. On behalf of KLAY Schools and Daycare, I extend a very warm welcome to each one of you. And before I start the session or before I take up your question and answer, I would really like to share that this is an initiative under KLAY Prep Schools and Daycare, which is very much rooted in the very thought of parent partnership and working hand in hand with parents. I feel privileged. I feel honored to be associated with this beautiful initiative. And under this initiative, we bring webinars to your desktops almost once a month at least. And I will be very honest before we talk about the topic given today. This is kind of a disclaimer, parents, that I work very hard in producing the research to you, which you might find useful in your beautiful journey of parenting. But today's topic, I would be very honestly telling you, or in fact, admitting it, confessing it, that we do not have much research in terms of behavioral pattern of children or behavioral sequencing of children's brain when they are going through this period or what happens next. But we do have patterns coming out to us through anecdotal recording and observations, through mini surveys from parents to schools, and we have a one-on-one counseling and conversational episodes with parents in past more than a month. Keeping all that in mind, I have created this particular session for each one of you, and let us try to see where do we stand as parents now, because this was a topic which we purely curated based on the conversations with multiple set of parents, especially in urban Indian parenting setup. Parents are asking this question to us at multiple platforms, and I myself, being a mother of two, I strongly feel that this is something that comes to my mind quite often. What is my role now? What do I do with my children to bring them to a routine? And what is it that we should do to make it easy for them? So parents, those of you who are returning audience, a very warm welcome. I see some names who are familiar to me now through various webinars, so very warm welcome. And some new names also, so the new joinees who are attending this kind of webinar for the first time, thank you so much, and warm welcome to you as well. And I hope we will do justice to your investment of time in this particular webinar. Just to make you comfortable in asking your questions, your thoughts, I am a certified child psychologist and family counselor. My research mainly lies in parenting in new era, especially related to Indian urban parenting setup. Though I also work with Anganwadis because I am a retired person now. I run my own consultancy with various countries and educational institutions in various countries, and KLAY Prep Schools and Daycare is my only client in India. This allows me to work with parents on one-on-one basis, and I love to be with children and parents, and love to hear directly on ground from them when I work. On an average, I work with 35 to 40 parents in a day, and nowadays I'm more or less virtually connecting with each parent. But what I am going to share with you is more or less oriented towards urban style of Indian parenting, life in metros and big cities of India. Because I work with Anganwadis and I work with multiple set of parents from small towns and villages also, I'll be very honest in telling you that the parenting that we see happening in rural India is very, very different than what we see in urban India. So today's session is more or less oriented towards that. And before I share some of the practical tips or the ways in which you will ease out this process of lockdown for your children and bring back the routine, I would really request you to take note of the fact that we really would request, or I would say, please be informed that every family is unique. You have your unique thread, your child is unique, your children in the family, even though born from same parents, are very unique. And that's why kindly take the information with pinch of salt. What works in your family, you decide. You are the best judge parents, so decide what will suit your family and then take it up. So what we are going to talk today, something that we really need to know as parents, is what's happening right now with our children. This is, as I said in the beginning, we do not have concrete research. This virus threat is very new to us. The way countries are struggling to find out the vaccine and treatment procedures for this particular threat, the same way behavioral science and psychology is struggling to find out the actual pattern and actual impact of this lockdown on children's psyche. But we do have initial set of research coming out. We do have mini surveys coming out, and based on that only I could produce this particular session for you. So this is my disclaimer before I begin, that whatever I'm going to share is something based on very initial set of research and data. We will try to look into what our children are going through in today's time, what's happening right now in Indian urban parenting, and then we will gradually move what tomorrow holds for each one of us as parents. Where do we stand, and what is it that looks like in coming few months? Uh, then we will talk in depth about a few things that we need to know why, as parents, while we transition our children from this process of lockdown to easing out of lockdown and phasing out of lockdown. I'll also share a 6-step takeaway. I have shared part of it in my previous webinar, but I will reiterate here and will make it easy for you so that you can try and follow it in your lives. And then I will open it up for your question and answer session. Parents, I'm kind of greedy, selfish, that when I hear from you, that's where my real learning lies. So I would really request you to start writing your thoughts, your feedback, your questions in the chat window as soon as it comes to your mind, because we would love to hear from you. And the main point is that I save enough time for Q&A because the interaction is important, and I'll share more tips. I can help you better when I hear from you about your family setup and your struggle or your challenges. So kindly do not hesitate. Please write directly to me in the chat window privately. I won't disclose your identity, but I will for sure take up your question if time permits. And let's see if your question can be beneficial for others also. So I'll share more research, more scientific answers when I take up your questions. To begin with, let us try to understand what's happening to our children as of now. Why we are doing that, why I'm talking about as parents, because to have an easy transition for our children, as parents, we need to know the very basic signs. We need to know what's happening to our children. And what I'm going to share with you now is true to majority of children, not necessarily all. So your family can be different than the pattern that we see in majority of people. And I respect that. I totally respect that. But in that case, I would say I can help you more on one-on-one basis on a platform like this. More or less, the session is oriented towards the general trend that we see. So the very first thing that we need to know, what's happening in children around us as of now, as of today, what is the impact and what exactly they are going through. So the good news that is coming our way, parents, is that Indian children, especially between the age group of 2 years to 8 years, and then there are surveys coming out for teenagers also, and both of these kind of surveys are pointing out to a simple fact, and the fact is actually a good news that our children are kind of showing great adaptability towards this change. Our children are doing really good in listening to parents, staying indoors, not really forcing parents to take them out. And this is happening in majority of families of urban Indian parenting. This is not so true for rural setup, but this is a pattern that we see in most of the metros and big cities of India, that children are kind of now settled in makeshift routine. So they are kind of agreed on not going out for shopping, for movies, for eating out. They are very much in rhythm with what mommy and daddy asking them to do. Uh, so the very first good news coming, majority of children are settled in this makeshift routine, and most of the teenagers are showing a pattern that family has taken over friends now. Teenagers and children between the age group of 8 to 18 years are connecting big time with the family. Families are watching movies together. They are finding some family board game time. And a majority of the families in India are finding resources to connect and stay indoors. Most of the families, when inquired about more or less in terms of how is it going, or do you see any challenges in keeping children indoors, is something that families are doing fairly well. Children are found to be adjusting very well in finding the new procedures for keeping themselves healthy and hygienic. So there is a trend which is increasing about calmness in chaos. Children and parents are focusing big time. In my previous webinars, I have given this example that allow your children to act like soldiers, empower them to fight this battle rather than giving them the feeling of helplessness. So a simple example that I shared in my last webinar also is that when a child asks, so daddy dear or mommy dear, why can't I go out and play with my friends? Instead of just saying, hey buddy, we need to stay indoors because if we go out, we will get sick, a virus will catch us, will attack us. Rather than saying that, the moment we say that, hey buddy, if we need to fight this battle, if we really need to beat this virus, we can and we should fight it out by staying indoors. We are contributing in this fight by staying indoors. And this is small change in conversation will go a long way. And we do see a pattern where Indian urban parenting is doing a great job. Kudos to each and every parent who has participated in this war by keeping children indoors and maintaining calmness in this chaos, and developing the real hygienic, healthy habits of children. But here also a catch. I already received a question about screen time. I'll take it up for sure when I start the Q&A session. Uh, Screen and siblings are coming closer. So yes, children are glued to screens a lot more than what they used to be. And also, there are more sibling fights recorded. Children are fighting with each other. And yes, we do see parents and children are having more screen exposure nowadays. This is a general pattern that we see. This is where our children are. But overall, even though with some kind of anxiety, worries about health of children, which is more or less reported by parents, not necessarily by children. Children do get anxiety and concerns through parents when they hear parents talking to someone else on phone or things like that. But overall, families are found to be in their comfort zone, parents, and to this more or less families have adjusted to this new normal. And though it's a great scene, it's a great reflection of fighting capacities of human body and mind, that we are highly adaptable and we are doing great in fighting this battle for our country and for people of this country. Uh, there is something that we really need to know here, is that when these things will go away, when you move out of your family, when the government is in the process of easing out of lockdown, when the government is in the process of coming out and allowing this whole process to be eased out, what will happen now? Because so far the trends are showing that most of the Indian urban households are following the norms. Children have adjusted to this new routine, as what I explained, even though there are some challenges of anxious parents, children missing their friends and friend circle, and children and families are more glued to screens now. Even after all this challenge, overall pattern that is coming, and this is too early to say, as I said in the beginning, parents, I don't have much of strong data coming, but this, whatever I could collect from the reliable sources, I am telling you that in general, the pattern is that children have adjusted very well to this new normal. But once the changes are happening around us, when we come out of this whole process, what's happening in the psyche of children now and what is happening in the psyche of parents is something that we need to understand. If we really want to support our children, apart from knowing what's happening today in their mind and body and what's happening in today's families, we need to now take the second step is about what next. When we are coming out of our homes, when families are going partially to their workplaces, when families are allowed to go out and get very basic minimal essential goods. When this is happening, so one thing that we really need to know as parents is that we will are now go through another transition. And trust me, human psyche functions very simply with the fact that transitions are actually critical. We actually by default resist any changes. So when we entered in lockdown, most of the time the clear cut psychological patterns coming out is like first 2 weeks were really, really tough. It took time for children to digest the fact, but now they are kind of settled. Now taking them out of that is again a challenge. It's again a struggle. And when families are coming out of homes, that's when we really need to know one thing, parents. When you come out of your home and you take your children out, very first thing, even though you are well informed of all the preventive measures that you need to take, please take note of the fact that things will not be in your control anymore. So, parents, right now, you really have control of the exposure given to your children. You really have the limitations of not taking your children out, but then you know that your children are safe in those four boundaries. You know that your children are eating healthy food. You know that your children are not showing any signs or symptoms of illness or sickness. You very well control the exposure given to your children. But the moment you come out of this lockdown phase, when the government eases it out, please be aware that things won't be in your control. Things, no matter how much you try, you want to protect it, you really can't do that. And because of that, parents, please be ready to take some tough decisions for your children. And this is something that as parents, we really need to know. We really need to know that this transition is not going to be easy for us. We really need to step into a phase where we have to make informed decisions for our children because we know our children best. We know their immunity best. We know their fighting capacities best. We know their psychological status best. We know their academic needs best. So, as parents, I would heavily recommend you to get into a mindset now where government is not going to control everything for you, and you as a family, you as a parent of a child, need to take some tough decisions now. So gear up, parents. please get into your mode of decision making and problem solving, because this is when it is needed most. Few things that are coming from science to support you in this transition, I will share it now. Once you are psychologically ready, once you are well informed about what has happened to our children during this lockdown and what comes next, now the next step to move on is to be aware of certain facts regarding this transition. So, what you all need to know through this process of transition, taking children out of lockdown, what should you do? A few scientific steps I would tell you, psychological steps when we take out children from either challenging situation, or when we take out children from a routine which is going to be shaken. We really use these measures to support children, and this is something that is true for most of the age group. So, very first thing that I would say, parents, if you are expecting, if you are an expecting mom, kindly try to stay indoors, because we really do not have any medical or science studies which really give us a pattern that how virus behave if it is present in an expecting mom. So we really do not have strong studies where we can say, okay, this is the way it transmits. Whether your baby in the womb will get it or not is something that is not known to us. So I will really request you to stay cautious as much as possible. And so is true for children between 0 to 2 years. So mommies and daddies, the government of India and Ministry of Health, Women and Child Welfare has given us clear-cut indication that it is okay if you need to postpone vaccination also. Please consult your pediatrician specifically related to your infants. But giving exposure to infants is something that we really discourage until unless it is really required, because we really don't know what is the atmosphere around them when they go out of the homes, especially to visit hospitals for vaccination. So this is something I would heavily recommend you to consult with your pediatrician and take the decision accordingly. But if you have older children, 3 year onward or so, I would say please be informed parent that there are certain transition measures that you need to take. And the very first thing about that is to transition from collective solidarity to selective solidarity. Uh, Psychological word, but I will try to explain to you. So, collective solidarity happens when things are pretty much in the same way outside your home also. When the government of India declared a lockdown to keep everyone safe, your brain as parent immediately get into a mode, oh, everyone is doing it, so I should do it, right? So it is very much like the atmosphere around you is supporting you to stay indoors. And so is true for children, parents. Children are very much following what parents are doing in this time. And this is a very beautiful proof of the strength of parents, because what you do is something that your child will do. It's not what you talk, but it's what you do is something that child will observe and absorb in his or her personality. So, collective solidarity is, it is easy for me to stay indoors because everyone is doing this, everyone is following it. But now, when lockdown is easing out, when you are bringing your children to another routine and changes in the routine that they have been following for weeks together, now, parents, it is high time that you move your mindset to selective solidarity. What do I mean by that? Selective solidarity happens based on your own family status. Selective solidarity happens when you know this is what my child goes through, when you know that this is true for my child and I have to take this decision solely for my family. It might not be happening in your surrounding. So, not everyone is keeping children indoor. Not everyone is deciding on sending children to school if school opens. face-to-face interactions with other children. You might see some parents allowing children to go for contact sport, even going out, playing, and playing outdoors because they believe that they cannot keep children indoors. But this is the time, parents, you really, really need to make a decision based on your own family. And that's the reason I said be ready to take some tough decision. One significant aspect coming across medical associations and pediatricians that I should share with each one of you is that parents, please be informed about the underlying pathology of your children. If your children have any significant sickness history, if you know that your children struggle in terms of immunity, if you know that your child has history of any significant ailment that might impact the child in coming days, then please make the decision accordingly. You really cannot blindly follow that others are allowing children to play, others are allowing children to go to school if the school reopens. I would heavily recommend you to take a solid decision in your family for your children. Keep your children informed about your decision and the rationale behind it, why you are taking that decision. But please follow the form of selective solidarity now, not the collective ones. Don't blindly go by what's happening around you now. Instead, you should now take a decision purely based on family. And this is something that you really need to stay firm on. Don't get influenced purely by what's happening around you. The next transition that you need to be ready about, another way, as I am sharing some ways to ease out this lockdown process for you, and this is something based on the initial set of surveys and initial set of research coming our way in the field of psychology and behavioral science. Geographical lifting is something that the government will take care that these zones can go out of lockdown. These zones are safe enough. But one thing that parents you really need to do is about phased lifting. So I would rather say, even if your city is out of lockdown, even if you come under the category where the lockdown norms are eased out, but if you have a positive case in your surrounding, if you know somebody who is being tested positive and very much in your vicinity, take an informed decision at this time. You decide your own phased lifting of lockdown. Government is there and working on majority of cases and the patterns, but you really know your neighborhood. So I would say, parents, before you take a decision of allowing children to go out or developing a new routine, do these basic research around you. Not only understand the underlying pathology or the body pattern of your child, but also understand the neighborhood, what's happening around you. You should be well informed. Once you are all thorough with it, then I would say, parents, let's start the transition in a very smart way. And countries like Denmark or Norway have introduced a concept of social bubbles. What do I mean by that? When you need to transition your children from the process of lockdown where they are totally confined in four walls of home and totally confined with you, and you know who is coming in your home, who is going out. Now, gradually, if you really want to take them out, create social bubbles. And as I said, there are countries who are trying that and giving us good results, so I can share that with you. Social bubble means you pick up any 3 or 4 families where your child will start interacting. So in your neighborhood, when you are very sure, allow your children to go and interact with those 3-4 families, and allow that much only in the first 16 to 18 days. These social bubbles will not only allow the child to have a gradual progression towards this process of easing out, but will also give you strength to have some control of the exposure given to your children. So social bubbles is a formula that is being adopted by many countries, and especially for children of younger generation. I would really recommend you to try it this way, where you are gradually moving to social bubble. You pick any 3 or 4 families in your neighborhood or in your social circle and allow your children to go and interact in those families and come back. This is just for allowing your child to get settled mentally, emotionally, to coming back to the routine. And this is something that has given us great result. Next step for transition is parents, and I am equal culprit of that. I would take the blame on me. And this is a pattern that is coming out of mommies in many research, I would say. Parents, please understand that we are now into a habit of policing our children, uh, out of our own anxiety, out of our own fear. And I, as mother, ended up doing so. I'll be very honest in saying that I end up asking my children, did you wash hands? Did you touch this grocery? Did you touch this milk packet? Don't do that. Let mama sanitize it. And we all are doing a kind of policing around our home to ensure that everything is fine, our children are well protected. But parents, please note, when I was sharing the transition slides with you, things will not be in our control anymore when we are allowing our children to go out. Trust me, our children are in very comfort zone when they are within the family setup. But the moment they go out, parents, we really need to move from policing to practicing. So now it is high time that as parents, we really need to uh, come into a process where we are controlling the exposure, but we are allowing the children to get into a habit of protecting themselves. So kindly move, allow your children to be cautious in not touching doorknobs often. Kindly allow your children to be aware of the fact that if they are entering into elevator, they should stand in the center and do not touch anything around them. And these kind of things you have informed them in past few weeks multiple times. This is the time now when you should see whether your children are doing it on their own or they still need instructions from you. If they still need instructions from you, parents, take more time before you ease out the lockdown, because trust me, your children are not yet ready to go out and protect themselves. Let's be very practical that we cannot be with our children all the time the moment they start going out. So please understand that you check, and the period to check this is close to 16 to 17 days. Any habit that child will absorb is something shown within a span of 16 to 21 days. So I would heavily recommend to you start working on it now before you send children out by the end of the month, because policing will control within your home environment, but practicing is something that they will take forward outside of home also. So very basic examples that I shared with you, that do not touch the milk packets the moment you see it lying outside the door. First you sanitize, first you clean, and then you use the milk. So it's true for vegetables, grocery. Allow your children to go in the elevators and see how do they stand. Are they standing in the middle, or they are still leaning towards the wall of the elevator? So I would really say check these things, because these are very great indications whether your policing has now been practicing or not. I would really recommend you to, if you think you are confident enough, if you know your social bubbles, if you are well aware of your neighborhood settings, and if, as a family, if you have shown your selective solidarity and taken the decision that your children are now ready to go outdoors, I would heavily, heavily recommend to join them. Don't send them off on their own beat of any age, even if you have teenagers. I work with many teenagers, and many families are asking me that. It's a good idea to start it gradually and join your children for outdoor walks, cycling, just going out for your social bubbles. A good idea is to join them and then gradually transition them to be on their own. This is the whole process of transition purely based on psychological and behavioral science that we read nowadays. But to summarize, just to give you a takeaway, because I'm already having many questions and I want to save enough time for that. I would really give you quick takeaways. The very first takeaway, parent, is three C's. Very important three C's for us now when we are putting our children back to a new routine. The first thing is conditioning, and it is very much rooted in the practicing aspect that I just shared with you. You really need to ensure, parents, that your children are now conditioned to this new normal. Your children should be conditioned to take care of themselves, covering their faces, hand washing procedures, standing in elevator in the center, unnecessarily no touching of doorknobs or metals around them, keeping their hands to themselves. These are very basic, small things that you need to condition your children into before you send them out. So, conditioning is the very first step that you need to do. Ensure that your children are conditioned to protect themselves. And if you're not sure about it, you kindly not go and follow that blindly, because you really need to know whether your children are mentally, psychologically ready, and this conditioning is found to be present in children above 2 years and 6 months. So the moment you have children in that age group, kindly go ahead and check these very basic steps. The second C is communication. Parents, if you are easing out your children out of lockdown, taking them to another routine now, kindly communicate with the stakeholders. If you are sending your children to schools, if the schools reopen, then I would heavily recommend to have a thorough communication channel with the school authorities. Lie down all the challenges and write it on a piece of paper or write it in an email and send it to the school. For example, my son has a history of asthma, so I am planning to inform school and send a reminder again about it. Though the school is well informed, but no harm in sending a reminder again of the underlying pathology of your children. And basically keeping the medications handy in school as well. The third C that I would say very much related with communication, parents, a big challenge. As parents, we need to know when we work with our children, more so true in cases that we are facing right now, is clarity in communication. Parents, please be ready that children will not adjust to back and forth communication. For example, if you allow your children to go out and play with other children, let's say from June onward, and then suddenly in 10 days you say, oh, no, 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 I'm scared, you should not play, oh, no, 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 you should not do this. This back and forth of your decision is something that will really put your children in a confused state, and they will be more negative in fighting this whole battle. I would heavily recommend you to take an informed decision. And once you have taken a decision, try to stand firm on it. So before you allow your children to mingle with other children or so, take your steps that I just explained to you. Make an informed decision, parents, so that you need not to go back and forth, because that's something very detrimental for children of any age group. It is more detrimental for children who are in teenage. So if you have older children, parents, I would heavily recommend you to be very cautious before you take a decision, and you really need to know on how really you need to communicate it to them so that you need not to take it back from them. This is something that I have shared in my previous webinar also, but I would really use this platform to reiterate this, because this has given us great results when we are working with families. Parents, kindly follow the procedure of reassuring. Even if you are putting your children to a new routine, you are taking them out of lockdown, even if your children are entering into online schooling or schooling, playing with children and going out in community, I would say at every step, kindly reassure that you all are together and you have taken some informed decisions and all of you stand on it. This is very important. Stay strong as a family. This continuous reassurance to children of any age group has given us great results, especially when children are showing us signs of anxiety and fear. Reassurance is one of the great medicines that is giving me great result when I work with families on one-on-one basis. The next part is the routine. the last two steps, and I'll take up your Q&A all very soon now. Routine is something that I might sound like a broken record to all those parents who are frequent visitor of this webinar, but trust me, parents, routine is something that is very important in psychological positive functioning of human brain. Be it children, be it adults. Even when I take sessions with adult psychology and when we work in group with teammates or colleagues, we often talk about bringing a routine in life, and this is something of high importance for children. So if your children are entering into online schooling, if you are going out with your children or doing anything, I would say start following that routine at least 2 weeks prior to that. So some schools are now sending invites and mails about in starting online schooling from June. I would heavily recommend you to start having that same kind of routine that your children will follow for online schooling from 15th May onward at least. At least bring that routine from 15th May onward, be it children of any age group, but please give enough time for children to settle into this new normal. And last but not the least, parents, I have shared whatever research has highlighted in finding the ways for an easy transition for children, but it will be incomplete if I do not share this last point with you. That is about regulating your own emotions, parents. I say it at multiple platforms, multiple times. I say this to myself again and again as a mommy of two, that we need to regulate our own emotions before we try to regulate our children's emotions. We need to take care of ourselves to take care of our children. We need to have very much clarity in our mind before we communicate anything to our children. And for that, parent dear, please take care of yourself. Keep your emotions at check, keep your stress at check, and then only you can offer the very best to your children. And that is something of high importance for me, because this is a very sincere effort to make this journey easy for each one of you. I'll share more tips when I start answering your questions. Kids are spending a lot of time on a screen. Is there an optimal time for screen time during lockdown? Good question, mommy dear. And you are not the first one who is asking me this question. To be honest, out of my 30 virtual meetings with parents, trust me, around 15 of them ask me this question. So you are not alone, and I am with you too. I ask this question to myself as well as a mom. And the answer to that is, parents, there is nothing wrong in screen. Screen, if you ask me, is not something that I would like to highlight here. Rather, I would like to highlight something as a screen time. So giving the concept of time to children with the screen is something that you should do. And we are seeing a pattern where children are actually spending good amount of time on a screen nowadays, and which is actually fine. Don't worry about it. As long as it is spread out, it is something that is not at one stretch. And more or less, if you are using this screen time as family bonding time as well. So if you all are watching a movie together and spending 2 odd hours together on screen, I'm fine with that. To be honest, in this tough time, it is perfectly fine to have these kind of moments spent together. Use the coming weekend and watch a movie together. Please do that. Don't hesitate in that. But overall, I would say you need to know two things, moms and dads in general, all those mommies and daddies who are listening to me. Screen always comes in two ways. One is private screen time, and second is social screen time for children. Social screen time for children is when children are watching something on a TV. So TV is in a social setting in your living room where there are background noises, something is dropping in the kitchen, someone is talking in the backdrop, someone is walking around, and all these things will not allow your child to get glued to the screen. The child's brain is getting distracted even when the child is watching something, and that's a very healthy setup. That's a great setup than having something in hand, which is a private screen time. So the moment you give a gadget to a child in the hand, which he or she is holding in the palm, is something which we would not encourage you to do much. So mommies and daddies, it's okay to have a bit increase in the screen time of children during lockdown, but if it has increased, kindly tilt towards a social screen time, not a private screen time. Don't allow children to watch it on tabs and mobiles. Not only it is more dangerous for eyes, but it is something more dangerous for brain. The brain gets into addictive mode when I am disconnected with the surroundings and only looking at what's holding in my hand. Uh, one more aspect to it, mommies and daddies. You might not like me saying this. In fact, I do feel that this is something I need to check myself also. But how much time are you spending on your own screen? Given the professional commitments and given the various platform through which now colleagues are connecting with each other, I would really say our own screen time has increased. But apart from your professional commitments, if you are really spending a lot of time in social media, entertainment, news, check that, parents, because trust me, if you are on a screen, there is no way you can control that when it comes to your children. Yep. Okay, I hope I could help you a bit, mommy. I have a son of 2.5 year old. Another question. With this new routine of staying at home, my son is becoming more stubborn, adamant, and makes mess if he doesn't get what he wants. Any suggestion on handling such situations? Daddy dear or mommy dear, I would say 2.5 years old. I'm so glad you are asking this question to me right now, because this is the window where you can bring discipline in your children's lives. So I'm so glad that you are such an involved parent and asking this question, because you might be thinking that this is rooted in lockdown and your child is not able to go out. Part of it is true. Part of it is true that children are building up energies in themselves, and they are not able to release it, and then they comes out through stubborn nature or temper tantrums. Children allowing themselves to be on floor, rolling out, shouting, hitting, kicking. These patterns are seen. But one thing that I'll tell you, daddy or mommy dear, here is that check the physical activities of your children first. We have seen a pattern, especially for children of 2 years to 3.5 years. If physical activities are controlled, that's when the children are showing more stubborn and finicky behavior and temper tantrums. So have something in your home through which a child releases the physical pent up energy. It might be as simple as skipping. It might be as simple as jumping up and down. It might be as simple as dancing on a dance number. But you really need to inculcate these things so that your child's pent up energy, the energies that are lying inside, go out. That will help you immensely, immensely. But if it is only a part rooted in lockdown, then you have to look at the larger picture. And the larger picture, be it lockdown or not lockdown, parent here, kindly be very selective in saying no to your children. You should know very well that this is high time that I should stop my child from doing this. So your no's should come out very rarely and very selectively. But if you have said no to your child, never, never ever change it into yes. No matter how your child behaves, no matter how much your child cries, even if the sky falls, I would not recommend you to change your no to yes. And this is a perfect remedy to cut down the stubborn behavior of your child. And kindly follow it in any situation, lockdown or not lockdown. Be very selective in saying no to your children. And if you say no, kindly say the next statement why you are saying no, and give them an option instead. Do not put the finger in the electrical socket because you will get hurt. Instead, let's color this butterfly. This kind of conversation, I just gave you one example, will help you a lot. Be it lockdown, not lockdown, parent here. Be very selective in saying no to your children, especially in this age group. If you say no matter what, don't change it. Okay, moving on to more questions. What do you think of homeschooling for senior KG child? Considering the circumstance doesn't look safe in next 1 year. Very good question. And I'll tell you, mommy and daddy, if you ask me normal circumstances, there are research which clearly highlight that homeschooling and social schooling, when children go out and study in a professional setup, is something that is being compared at various platforms. And though there are not much differences in the academic performances of children, homeschooling and schooling in a professional setup, both children are found to be doing fairly good in academic performances. But we do see a pattern in terms of socialization and social connectivity of children when they struggle. So I would heavily recommend to you, for one thing, if you have enough resources, you can tilt towards homeschooling for kindergarten children. No harm in that. Please do not question yourself when you take this decision and strictly follow it. But some cautions to you. One thing is, you really need to be well informed of the developmental milestones and patterns of children before you enter into homeschooling as a teacher for yourself, for your children. And second thing that I would really put a caution for you, parent dear, homeschooling is a big burden on parents also. It's not only that you need to think of your child, think of yourself also. Parents are burning out when they are entering into homeschooling across globe, and I have worked with close to 300 or so mommies and daddies who are into homeschooling across globe. A couple of my clients in US, Singapore, and even in Australia. um, I was actually yesterday talking to a family from Sydney, and they are struggling big time because homeschooling is a tedious job. It is exhausting. So if you are well aware of these aspects, then you are more than welcome to enter into homeschooling, and also check the underlying pathology and immunity of your child. If you really have a suspicion about that, if you are really concerned about health of your child, it's a great idea to opt for. And I agree with you on that, that coming 1 or 2 years, let's embrace it, that things will not go back to normal so soon. So yes, it's a good idea, but please be informed of the cautions I shared with you. Like when the schools in Denmark got opened, a Danish woman started a Facebook note by saying that my child won't be a guinea pig, and she was dead against of starting or sending children to school, because as per her, why would my child be a guinea pig, and say that whether children can sustain a social gathering or not after the pandemic. And you won't believe, but she has now 40,000 followers. So there are many moms and dads who believe that, yes, I should not put my child at stake, and I should not send my child to any of these social settings. And you are more than welcome to opt that. But be ready that it needs a lot of effort from your end, and it actually needs a lot of patience at times. So if you are ready emotionally for that, please go ahead for that. No harm in that. Homeschooling or smaller study groups in social bubbles in selective neighborhood, yes, a good idea. Social bubbles is something that is being accepted across globe, and there are many parents who are trying these things within their vicinity, within their neighborhood. Please go ahead, try that, as long as you have other parents well informed. And sometimes, like I work with some families who are working through these social bubbles as a mini setup of a school, like 4 or 5 families coming together so that children are socializing within those 4 or 5 children, and they are also taking turns in doing it. If you are really interested in knowing more about it, let me share this email ID with you, parent.support@clayschools.com. You can write to me on that, and I'll be more than happy to give you more details about working through social bubbles, and how parents are taking turns so that it's not a burden on one person, and still managing homeschooling very well. So you can try that. Yeah. How to keep toddlers busy in lockdown? Not sure if this is the correct forum, but would be helpful if could help, mainly for work from home parents. Well, no worries, but you are asking the question at the right platform, Mommy here, and please do not hesitate in sharing your struggle. I wish I could help you more, but two quick tips coming your way. I would say parents understand that toddlers are really working beautifully with this new normal, new routine. There are toddlers who were not aware that, oh, my daddy or mommy can stay with me whole day. They were actually into a zone of daycare settings, professional settings, and now they are also confined in the home. They were very fond of socialization with other children, and now they are all by with their parents. So they are also going through a lot. How do you help such toddlers? I would say parent, few tips. One thing is routine. You really, really need to bring a routine. The predictability of the day will help you big time. And do not deviate from the 40-minute window. So if your child gets up at 7 in the morning or 8 in the morning, within 40 minutes of that, your child should get up every single day. So between 8 to 8:40, your child should leave bed, and this 40-minute window is very important for children and adults both. And for toddlers, it has given us great results. So bring a routine in your child's life. Second thing is sleep and eating pattern. If your child is getting 10 hours of enough sleep, and your child is getting to bed close to 8 or 9 and then getting up in the morning hours, it's perfectly fine. It's a great thing to do. Do not allow your child to stay up late at night, because that is something that will give you very tough time. If children are not following healthy meal and sleep pattern, they are found to be more clinging to the parents, especially when parents have work from home, like you mentioned. So you have to take a call, and your child is asking you to play with him or her. Come play with me is something that will make you big struggle. So kindly not do that. Have a routine and have a good meal and sleep pattern for your child. Third tip I would give to you is to have some kind of water play in your child's life. When you allow your children to sit in a tub full of lukewarm water and the child is doing splish splash, that is when the child is actually releasing a lot of energies. And soon after that, if you give a diet which is rich in carbohydrates, your child will sleep longer and will have a good night's sleep. So I would really recommend you to have some kind of water or sand play, because these are two most favorite toys of children across globe, and that should help you. We are coming to the close of this session, and I am sorry, I do have couple of other questions remaining with me, but I would request you to write to me at parent.support@clayschools.com. Thank you so much, parents, for your encouraging words. And if you found the session useful, I am honored. I would again say we do not have very clear-cut research coming our way. Most of my webinars, I simplify the research and create these sessions for you. But this one is more of very initial stages of research, but I'm glad if you found the tips useful. And thank you so much for your encouraging words. I'm honored if you found the session excellent, useful. Oh, thank you so much, parents. If you found it useful, you made my day. I am really, really excited to bring more research to you, and I am really honored that you are writing back to me with these kind words. Thank you so much. Happy parenting to each one of you. Stay tuned. We will really keep bringing more sessions like this for you, and please do not hesitate to write to me on this particular platform, parent.support@clayschools.com, to all those questions that remain unanswered. I'll touch base with you for sure. Happy parenting, and parents take an informed decision. I'm honored. This non-stop flow of encouraging words really motivates me to work harder for the next session. So thank you so much. And I really would request you to do a thorough exercise within your family before you decide on the next steps for your children. Thank you so much. Stay tuned. Happy parenting to each one of you.